good evening, and welcome to the Caring View, the online health and social care platform free to access to absolutely everybody. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like, hit that follow, give us a subscribe on any of the platforms that you're currently watching us on, be that LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitch, Insta, I don't care. Give us a follow. Follow us on Spotify and all your favorite podcasting sites for all of our podcast episodes. And go to www.thecaringview.co.uk for access to absolutely everything we do. Everything we do is completely free and it will never cost you a penny. The only reason we can provide you this wonderful stuff for free is, actually, I don't think I say this enough. It's not all us. It's for you guys out there listening and watching us. You provide us content, you provide us resources, you share your learning and knowledge with us, and we share that out further. So huge thank you to you lot first. But you don't give us money, our sponsors do. So we need to say thank you to them. So we have some fabulous sponsors. We have Prosperwell, the UK's leading digital marketing agency, www.prosperwell.co.uk. Give them a call for any of your marketing needs, be that wanting to increase occupancy, you've got some posts you need to fill, you just want to tell the world how bloody amazing you are. Get in touch with Prosperwell. They will help you. You've got CBAT. Care Business Associates training for all of your healthcare training needs. And I mean, they provide so much, not just your normal care training, but they do HR stuff, they do leadership stuff, they do train the trainer courses, they do clinical courses, they do chaps. Chaps is amazing. Check them out. Get in touch with Elaine. Paul's too busy sunning it up in Spain most of his time nowadays to actually do any work. So Elaine is the mastermind now behind CBAT. Paul, sue me. Elaine is amazing. Please get in touch with CBAT. We have Attis Care by Attis Insurance Brokers, the comprehensive care coverage and proactive risk management. If you miss any of these websites as they're up on the screen, as always, catch us up on YouTube. These episodes are up live forever for you to watch until YouTube goes under or gets bought by Musk and gets turned into some, I don't know, awful thing that Musk wants to turn him into. We have got Log My Care. My mouse isn't working and I can't get them up. We have Log My Care. We have Log My Care, the intuitive care management platform loved by complex care providers, www.logmycare.co.uk. They also have a freemium version that you can try before you buy. Actually, probably prevalent to the conversation we're going to be having tonight about making sure that you find the right systems and services for you. We have Health Automated Online and then Learningment Online, brainchild of Jack White. AI-powered software. It's the future. It is here to stay. So go give them a check out. Jack AI also powers our fabulous new website. Florence, directly connecting healthcare professionals and organizations with shifts and training around the country. www.florence.co.uk. Dan and Charles, absolutely fabulous people, and also a great alternative to your usual agencies. And then last but not least, if I can find them, we have Every Step Care Consultancy, transforming care services with tailored consultancy, turnaround management, coaching, and compliance support. If you find yourself in a pickle and you are scratching your heads and go, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, get in touch with Every Step Care Consultancy, because Nicola Holmes is fabulous and amazing and will guide you on that right path. Whew. Good evening, Mark. Good evening, Alyson. How are you both?
I'm good.
Hello.
Thank you.
I am very glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me back again. Very exciting. I was loving. Can I just take a minute for the quiffs that you both have in that introduction? Like, I feel like they're underrated massively. I think we should take some shout out for the quiffs.
I mean, I can't take credit for mine. Mine's from some Indian guy who gave his hair into a wig. So I don't even know where my quiff comes from, but I stick it on every other week. So, you know.
Yeah, I looked at that picture, funny, I thought, God, I look bloody awful. I don't know. I don't think my hair would stand up that tall anymore. Well, maybe it will, but it's full of like chlorine on that at the moment. But yeah, it's a bloody big quiff on that one. But yeah.
I thought it was great. I was loving them. I thought it was a good start, good strong start from everyone this today.
I'll have to get a perm now to match Adam's so that we can have a.
Oh my gosh, do.
I must shave it.
Oh no, don't do that. Once you shave it, oh no, you look like a potato like me. I'm glad I have hair now. Okay, so before we get into tonight's topic, Alyson, you've been on the show before. You are a strong and wonderful friend of the Caring View, but for those who don't know you, please tell us a bit about who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Alyson Vale, and I am Business and Operations Director for Abbotsford Care, which is a care home group based in Fife in Scotland. And it was a family business, so it was started by my mum and dad back in 1987, before I was even born. And I got the opportunity to sort of take over from them and kind of continue the legacy. So I call myself like a second gen care home operator. And just hopefully I can have some, something to share with you tonight. I don't know, sometimes I feel like I come into these spaces and go, I'm not an expert in any of these things, but I like to talk, so who knows, like that's a good enough reason, I think, most of the time.
Honestly, it's amazing to have you on. As always, it's always great to hear from you, Alyson, even if you are talking crap. No, I'm joking, you never do.
No, the only time I always do it. I'm okay with it.
only time I've ever heard you talk rubbish is in our Eurovision chat some years, and you're like, I love this one, and I'm like, really? Like this one? Okay, not living for them.
That brings me such joy. Our Eurovision chat, I mean, I think it's completely underrated. And maybe there are other people out there in the social care universe that would like to join our Eurovision WhatsApp group. But every year when that comes around, it is one of my favorite things. And I remember trying to communicate with my friends. It was like watching Eurovision, and I was chatting to them as well. And they were like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm chatting to these two guys I met online. And they were like, that's weird. And I was like, I know, I've never met them, but I love it. Now I've met Mark in person. I feel like it's totally fine. It's not weird anymore. It's okay.
Not weird at all. Just two random guys. Okay, so tonight we are talking around ensuring you get the right system for your company and avoid the cowboys that are out there. It's going to be a bit of a candid conversation, but it's all around choosing the right systems for our social care organizations. We're going to explore how to avoid costly mistakes, spot warning signs of unreliable systems, and ensure solutions truly support care delivery. Anyone in the comments tonight, please ask your questions. If you've had bad experiences yourself, please let us know. We are all here for learning outcomes. Let's share the learning. We've all made mistakes in the past. I've made mistakes in the past. I probably made mistakes today. Make mistakes all the time. So please, I've just turned the bath off actually, and I've turned the extractor fan off as well. So I know when I go in there, it's going to be like an ice rink. It's just going to be slippy and slidey everywhere because nothing's taking the steam away. There's my mistake for the night. But it's going to be great to have this conversation tonight and hopefully provide some guidance around picking those right systems. So Mark, I've done enough and I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to tonight's conversation. And I guess before we kick off looking at kind of suppliers and digital, obviously, and I know from you that you're still, even though you've got tech within your care homes, you're still predominantly paper-based. And I guess I want to ask, how do you feel being a paper-based service in kind of a digital era? And then just to explore that question about whether paper is actually okay in this day and age. And I'll let you come in, and then I can also come in around, because the care home I was managing during COVID was also paper-based, and I believe still is. So there are a number of services that are out there that still don't operate on digital systems.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is one of the reasons I feel like such an imposter in this space, because actually, yeah, our services are predominantly working with kind of paper-based kind of systems. And I think from my perspective, the reasons we haven't done that full digital switch yet is because actually I haven't found the right system that I'm happy with. And I think that, that might be, some people might criticize that as putting off, or not, afraid to take a risk or anything. It's not about that. It's actually that we've tried our systems and processes, and actually I feel very much that for me, the big driver behind all of these changes is about making sure we're supporting the workforce. So the last thing I want to do is to take the wrong decision and end up causing more difficulties in the long run, which is why kind of what we're doing right now is really working with our staff to understand what are the kind of things that they're looking for, what are the things that really matter to them, to make sure we can really take the right steps that matter. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. And I don't think that like paper-based is all that bad, because actually you are not connected to a screen 24/7. And I think actually what we've already had some feedback about from, relatives and people who are living in our services is actually, people are looking down at mobile phones. They don't want that. They want to be able to, have those quality conversations with people, and they don't want people stuck behind a desk and behind a computer. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we're considering in this space. And yeah, that's what I say. I'm not an expert, but I definitely know what we've tried. We've really kind of focused on just really testing whether it's the right solution for us before we go any further. And that means we haven't probably taken the big steps that we should have, but also it means that because technology is advancing so quickly, I feel like we're in a really pivotal place right now, because there are people who will have taken on systems maybe 10 years ago, and actually they will feel stuck and unable to change to the next step potentially. So yeah, it's a good time, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think firstly, I don't think you have to have imposter syndrome, because I think it's not like you've not tried tech systems. You've definitely tried them, but they've not worked. So, and listening to you there, kind of the care home when I was managing it, we had people living with learning disabilities, people living with mental health, some with capacity, some of that. And the ones with capacity, a large majority of them didn't want care plans. So we didn't have care plans from them. I mean, we had a book that just said this would be their care plan, but they don't want it. And then they'd obviously sign to say that. Some of them didn't want us to keep care records, so we didn't have any records for them because they refused to allow us to have consent to write details about them. But the CQC really struggled with that. The local authority during their PAMS inspections were really good with it. This person-centred, you're doing it for them. Just listening to you there talking about what your residents want in terms of people not being behind a screen and being face-to-face and, you know, being present in the moment. Surely that's more than, you know, all of us pushing digital systems. But I do think there will become a time where, how do we argue that with regulators? I mean, you're obviously in Scotland. What does your regulator there say around kind of digital systems? Because here in England, CQC are kind of saying if you haven't got a digital system, you can't get an outstanding rating.
Yeah, so for us, I don't believe that there's currently any connection between those grading systems and the requirement for digital. Like, so for example, if you had, like, one of our services has just received a 6 and they don't have a digital system, so there's not those direct ties. One of the things about, obviously, in Scotland is that the best grades in the 6s is relating to kind of what they call sector leading. So you have to be thinking about things in a different way to other people to be able to achieve that in the first place. And some of that instinctively these days is connected to technology, but it's not reliant on that. And I think, like, from my perspective, it's one of the biggest problems I have with all of these things around capturing and kind of recording data and information in care homes in general. I think what we can never forget is that we're kind of propagating a culture of mistrust. We have to record everything that happens because you know that rule, right? If it's not written down, it didn't happen. And actually, that's a really horrible place to be, like, every single day. Like, oh, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Just kind of elevates this feeling of mistrust that exists across the whole sector. And I think from my perspective, what I would love us is to be in a different place where that wasn't something we were thinking about, that there was a way to kind of for it not to be sort of constantly written down everything. Because the question I ask is, who is it for? You know, I think it's a really amazing thing your care home is doing in terms of not, you know, being able to honor the wishes of individuals by not having something recording everything that they're doing, because I think it has to be about involving the resident in those choices. And right now in Scotland anyway, we don't have a choice. Those things have got to be recorded, because otherwise if they don't get recorded, they didn't happen. And I think it's, yeah, I have a lot of issues with that sort of that place that we're not shifting care from right now. We're still thinking about, you know, how do we evidence this and evidence that, and actually, who's it for? What's the point? Because then we're leaving people in a position of, like, why bother documenting this? You know, it's, yeah. I think it's a place that needs further kind of like diving into in some ways.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think for me, there's this really awkward thing nowadays where, because it's digital and you can record everyone, that's what everyone expects. Now, the regulator have this mindset, and I have this mindset too, that if you're using a digital system, you have access to a ton more data. And because you've got access to a ton more data, your governance should increase thusfold, because you've got all that additional data that you should be able to review and proactively work at risk mitigation, identifying precursors to big issues and to big risks. It's what I spend most of my time doing. My day-to-day has been spent looking at our services, identifying what common themes and trends are, and trying to sort of put together risk management across the services, whilst also having a look at what's amazing and what we're doing that's great, and sharing that greatness across the services. But because the regulators think like that, and because contractors and commissioners think like that, families now think like that. So families now want to see records which detail everything. And, you know, well, my mum's not had this and my dad's not had this, because they're wanting everything and the absolute minutiae being recorded, which in turn results in your team spending so much time literally just recording data. I would love to know if any services out there have done cost impact assessments on how much more they're spending on team members since going digital than they were paper. Because most of your recording originally was a folder in a bedroom, they've had this fluid, they've had this food, they've done this today. And you would fill it in either throughout the day or at the end of the shift, and you go, this is what everyone's had. And the rest of the day spent doing everything that you're supposed to do. Whereas now, everything's got to be done at the time that you've delivered that care, because if you haven't, CQC say you're not responsive. Or commissioners say you're not responsive. Well, you've recorded this, but it didn't happen then, did it? Because you've recorded it 4 hours later. Yeah, because they were having fun and they were doing what they wanted to do. They can't just stop mid-thing going, oh, just taking you off the toilet, 1 sec. Because it takes you out of that moment and it removes that human connection. I think part of the problem, in my opinion, is the government coming out and saying they wanted like 80% of providers on digital software by 2024, and everyone rushed out to go and do it, and no one thought of the consequences. But it's here now, and now that it's here, we've got to sort of backwards engineer ourselves into going, but how do we make that work now? Now we've got it, how do we make it work? Because care plans are rubbish and care systems don't do great care plans, and everyone's reviewing care plans monthly now, which you don't actually need to do, because we're not actually asking people how often you want them reviewing. And even if you do ask them and they say every 6 months, the system automatically makes you do it monthly. So how do you do it on the system when it's getting to a point where we're going back to institutionalized ways of recording care when we're trying to move care away from being institutionalized. And it's counterproductive. It's really difficult. And this is coming from someone who advocates digital systems in my own service, because I need to a senior leadership team, and we've got the systems there and we need them to work. But I'm also listening to my team and they're going, but it doesn't work the way we need it to. We need to make it work better for us. And yes, sometimes that's frustrating because you put a lot of effort into doing what you're doing. But at the end of the day, what matters most is how your team and how your residents, the people who use your service, interpret it. And if they're not interpreting it great, fine, suck it up. No ego here. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board and sort of address it. But we've put ourselves into this corner now, and it's I feel like it's going to be hard to get us out of it.
I totally agree. I think digital systems in general have moved us to task orientation, and that's the biggest problem. So much of the culture of improvement of care was all about making sure those meaningful connections were what we wanted to continue to, promote and encourage and support people's independence and support people's risk taking and all those things. But we are absolutely bound to this task completion processing that is about getting data and evidence. If we've done this, we've done that, and actually it takes away that human aspect of the care. And I think that is what's really sad, is that people are absolutely kind of like bound by like those recording mechanisms, whether they're paper or digital. I mean, I don't think it's any different either system. I think it's the reality that people are living with, that that they have to justify themselves and they have to justify the things that they're doing every single day, whether that's justifying what we do on a day-to-day basis for funding, or whether it's justifying, to relatives, to residents, whatever it is. It's all about justifying and kind of like promoting the evidence that can be found from what we're doing. And I really do think it just takes away that human aspect entirely. And I would love to be able to think about how we could get back to that, how we could get back to really just promoting those human connections and making that be the most important part. Yeah.
I agree. I had a debate with an inspector once because they were like, we've not recorded what meals this person's had throughout the day. Yeah, because they're not at risk of malnutrition. But how do we know they've eaten during the day? Because we've said that they've had meals throughout the day in the handover note, but we don't know what they've had and we don't know how much they've had. I don't care. They are literally not at risk of losing weight. They are not at risk of anything nutritionally that we need to be keeping an eye on. If they were, maybe we would. They're not losing weight. Why would we record every single morsel that they're eating? For me, that's restrictive. It's not humane. It's just not nice.
Sorry, Mark. No, you've said exactly what I was going to say. I think some of it is a lack around managers having the confidence to have those difficult conversations with inspectors, with consultants that are coming in, with directors or the senior leadership team. But you are absolutely right, because the amount of times I had to push back about, well, we don't have bowel charts because nobody has any problems with their bowels, and we don't have exactly what you said. We don't have records of their food because they prepare their meals independently. It's almost supported living, and we don't have fluids because there's no concerns about the amount that they drink. It's probably more concerned that they drink too much, but yeah, I think sometimes we aren't empowered to kind of push back on inspectors or the regulator or social workers or whoever it is that's asking for that information. I mean, I've got an example of somebody that had raised a safeguarding around pressure sores, but we weren't even doing anything to do with personal care. So actually we're in there for a completely different need. So why would we have identified pressure sores? And it's about having that and being able to push back and say, well, actually, we're not doing everything. We can't capture and document everything that we don't know, because we don't know. We can only capture and document what we do know. But I think sometimes they do expect everything. But like you said, Alyson, it takes away that kind of person-centered care that we're all aiming to get to.
I think so. I think it's about I was just going to say, I think it's about those relationships as well. Like, I think the relationships are key, and actually when we are thinking about the relationships of trust that need to be developed and grown over time between residents and carers and all those people who probably know so much about a person because they've gotten to know them, they've gotten to take that time. Writing all of that down is always going to be difficult, and it's never going to be easy. And I think you sometimes, like, when you know your friend, or you know your resident because you know something about them that you've learned over time, and actually that isn't always easy to document or to know or to have that kind of, like, put that into words. Sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, Jean's just a bit off today, like, and how do you describe that? And I think sometimes we do limit ourselves not only by the need to record it all, but also thinking about that it's all going to be done in written word. A lot of the stuff that we do is in written word. Imagine if we did it totally differently, and instead, we were asking people to choose what color they felt today. How would that be different, for people?
I agree. It's innovation, isn't it? In sort of looking at things personal to those individuals. I'm just going to come to the comments and then try and bring us on track of sort of avoiding pitfalls on these systems. So Teresa's come in the comments and said, care homes give care on a shoestring budget. I feel the government should look at this and put money into a universal system. I mean, it's no lie that we don't have funding in social care, but we're still expected to deliver the most outstanding services we possibly can do. I know in England, I don't know whether it's the same for yourself in Scotland, but this sort of abolition of NHS England sort of had a knock-on effect now of a number of different services, and we're losing support left, right and centre. But we're still expected to deliver the same amount of stuff. And in fact, we're taking on stuff that our NHS partners used to do that they don't do now, and now we have to do it because they're not there to do it for us with no additional money. So yeah, I totally agree. And Jack White, oh, look at that, one of our fabulous sponsors in the comments, not the lead singer and guitarist from the White Stripes, I must remind you, but no, it is Jack White of and Learning Mint. Jack says the right app should not slow you down or hinder you. They should be adopted as part of a workable flow. There is no difference to writing notes on paper as on a digital system. Notes have to be written, and in a hospital, nurses and doctors write these notes bedside. It's an expected norm. However, having a system which can interpret and just transcribe notes effectively will help reduce this. I feel like this is a plug for Health Automated, Jack, if I'm completely honest. But I think we should go and check out Health Automated because, yes, intuitive. I think there is a lot of bias on the performance of older systems and their functionality, and this is sometimes used subconsciously as a justification for moving forward with other systems. Now, I sort of agree with what Jack's saying around that sort of bias around the older systems. Older system user here, older system user that is saying the system is not intuitive, actually isn't person-centered, is very tactile, task-oriented. It's very difficult to record. I think what people struggle with, and is sometimes I still struggle with it, is how do we visualize? I sometimes think we visualize something going from paper and carbon copy it onto a digital system. Whereas a digital system isn't going to try and clone what we currently do, it's doing what we currently do differently. but we try and do things how we used to do them on the digital system. And that's what's difficult. And I think that's what people will struggle to get their minds around. It's what I struggle to get my head around is I'm going to do care planning, but it's not going to be the same as I've done it on paper. It is going to be different, but there must be a way in which this is more user-friendly and more accessible. I still think we should be having more conversations internally in services and going, do I need to record that? Should I be recording that? Is that something I should be writing down? Even down to the number of care plans you've got to have. I mean, we've got like 20 plus different care plans for each resident at the moment. And you still get contracts coming in going, you don't have a care plan for this? Yeah, who's going to read it? Like, you're reading it? Great. Who else is going to read it? Because the resident's not. And I can guarantee you my team don't. They don't have the time. They literally don't have the time. And apart from the nurse reviewing it every month, no one else is going to read it. So surely there must be something much more efficient that we could put in place rather than 26 different ADLs. Mark, try and bring us back on track.
I will. Now, I do, before I bring us back on track, we do have this in reablement all the time because we support people up to 6 weeks. On average, people are only with us for 3 to 4 weeks. So our care plans are basic. So it's the goals that people want to achieve, a little bio about kind of them for the carers, just because they might be walking into somebody that they've not met before, the goals they want to achieve and how to achieve them. And that is it. And then the risk assessments. But the regulators, local authorities, social really struggle with the care plans. Exactly what you said. Well, you don't have one for this, you don't have one for that. Well, we could spend all day writing those care plans, but actually we need to be with the person, therapy-led, getting them back up on their feet, not spending 5, 6, 7 hours devising a care plan with them, when actually, at the end of that, they might not even need our service, and we can signpost them to a volunteer service, and they leave our service after a day. But yeah, it definitely comes up a lot in reablement services. Bringing us back on track, I know you want to do pitfalls, Adam. I'm just going to jump to avoiding lengthy contracts first, because Alyson, I know you've trialed systems. I think that's something that a lot of providers will be interested in, because I think a lot of people struggle to get a trial. They might be able to do a demo, but not an actual trial. Talk to us about that. How have you avoided kind of signing yourself into kind of a year, 3-year, 5-year contract, being able to put a system in place, work out whether it works for you or not, and then kind of what you're doing with that feedback to then get back out of said contracts?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think it's just based on the experiences we've had. I mean, we would always push for a trial. We always do push for a trial, because from my perspective, I think that there's so much that you can get to know about a system beyond the salesman's pitch, and actually into taking the time to spend to spend with it. And to be honest, the reality of it is that actually when my staff get to use it, they've got more knowledge, more experience, and more direct kind of like hands-on kind of approaches to know whether or not it's going to meet their needs. I can sit in my office and be like, yeah, I think this looks great. I think it's covered in. I think it's ticking all the boxes. But if it gets out there and it's not going to work, then we have to respond to that. And it's interesting because I went to a and I'm not mentioning any names before I get sued. I went to a very kind of well-known rota company, software company, and I asked to do a trial. And we did the trial in 2 different homes just to see how it would be taken on. And actually, we didn't take it any further after the trial because all the services said, no, this isn't working for us. We don't like it. We don't want it. Don't bother. And so we didn't. And we stuck to the same paper processes we have right now. Now, ironically, we may find ourselves trying again with the same company another 1.5 years, 2 years down the line with a different home to see whether or not it would meet their needs. But actually, we've had a lot of honest conversations with the provider and saying, actually, you didn't give us the support we needed in that process. And that if you want us to be able to commit to you, then you're going to have to commit to supporting us to be able to get us where we need to be. And I think those are, like you say, sometimes people do struggle to have some of those conversations, but actually, that's one area where I don't feel like I have any issue with telling people, nah, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it until it's going to meet our needs. And saying that, again, and another sort of, because we're very much in the throes of all these kind of digital conversations, we are and have signed on the dotted line with a EMAR company just yesterday. We had a lot of conversations with them back and forward. We showed and shared some of with some of our services. the process of it. People have been wanting EMAR for a long, long time, and we just hadn't made that transition. And so we've agreed now to go ahead, but in our contract, have very specifically asked for a 12-month breakout clause. If we get within 12, if we get all the way up for a year and we're not feeling confident with it the way we hope and expect to be, then we'll be able to come out of that. And I think that's really important. I have signed a 3-year contract, but I've got a 12-month breakout, which means that I've got that security in myself for me to go, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. But also I think it means that the company is going to have to work with us really closely to make sure we get to those points and get through all the difficulties and move through the implementation in the best way possible. And there's other care planning companies that we've worked with in the past, again, where we did trials of 2 different softwares in one of our best care homes. And they didn't like it, and they didn't feel like it worked for them. And I had to take and listen to the feedback they had. And I think that's really important to make sure that your staff have a voice in any digital process that you're moving forward with, because at the end of the day, they're the people using it. You could go ahead and choose the cheapest product because actually it's going to be the lowest, it's going to cost you the least and it's going to be the one. But actually, if that doesn't work for anybody, you're going to cost yourself massive amounts of money, either having to supplement, the bits that it doesn't achieve for you, or, finding other ways to reward your staff because they're so disgruntled about what you're proposing. So I think that it really is about getting their voice and getting their opinions and thinking about how we work with them to make sure it really responds to them. And as I say, some of the most interesting stuff we've done really recently is actually about talking about the care planning process with our staff and having proper workshops on what is it you want and need, how do you want it to feel different, what does that look like, and then using some really interesting AI tools to generate our own kind of feedback from that to then take forward to the next stages. So I think it's so much about making sure all voices are heard as much as we possibly can.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, this sounds really familiar, this way of working. And it reminds me of a guide we put together with Radar, because not everyone's got your confidence. Not everyone's got your ability to go, I need a 12-month breakout clause. Not everyone knows that you can ask for that. No one knows, there are people out there that don't even know what that is. They just think, well, it's 3 years and 3 years. Right, that's fine. They'll think, 14-day cooling off period, but they won't think about, that sort of 12-month period. And then I'm also thinking around that customer partner relationship with that provider. Once you take them on board, do they hold your hand? Do they walk you through it? Are they there as a support when you need them? Or is it a case of, we've given you 2 hours worth of training, this is our support email, contact us here, there's no phone number to get us on, and if anything happens, check our support page. I'm saying that because I do have a provider that we use for one of our digital systems. I won't say what it is or what type of system it is, but there is no way to talk to anybody, and you literally have to either submit an email ticket or check their status page for updates. And what Mark and I did is we worked with the fabulous team over at Radar, and we put together a tech check guide. I've posted the link in the comments, so you can go and check it out on the comments. Download it yourself, adapt it, do whatever you want with it, completely bastardize it. I don't really care. It's here just to give you a sort of guide on starting to search for providers and suppliers in a much more structured, efficient way. So actually finding out about who they are and do they hold the same values of you? Can they give you real live customer sort of feedback? I'm just trying to find the one where you were talking around about contracts, because we have got have we got feedbacks, innovations. Here we go, the pricing. So what's the pricing model? Are there any additional costs? What's your contract visibility and flexibility? All of those things really, really important to ask. And actually, if you get to the end of asking all of these questions and you think to yourself, oh God, no, I really don't feel comfortable with this, don't do it. Literally don't, or feed back to them. This is a no from us at the moment because actually you pay men more than women. Be honest with them. You've got to be able to stay true to your values. And what message does it give to your team if you go to an organization that doesn't have a good gender parity pay? What message does that give to your team? We pay everyone the same, but we support people who don't. It can even go down to the sort of level of that. I famously tell this story, and Mark and I had a sponsor come to us. They really wanted to sponsor us. I would never name them. And I asked them to tell me what their gender pay gap was. They didn't know. Went on the website, pay men considerably more than women. So what's your EDI? You know, what's your EDI like on your board or within your senior management team? Everyone was a white man. So I'm like, okay, no, not for us, I'm afraid, because we celebrate diversity, we celebrate parity, we celebrate equality, we celebrate inclusion of all sorts. And I cannot, in goodwill, recommend a company to all of our listeners because you want to give us money. That's not what I'm here for. I want to recommend people who I know are going to be beneficial and fruitful and nourishing to the people we support. And the same has to be yourself internally. So I commend you, Alyson, for having the sort of cojones to be able to do what you've done to get to the systems where you're at.
I think it's so important. I think everything you just said, I think it's so underrated. I think the power that we can have within the sector to really make the change that we want to happen. And it's through things like you've just talked about. Like, that is incredibly powerful. And actually, there's so much that people take for granted. And Mark and I did a presentation way back at the Global Aging Conference a while ago. We talked about how everyone has the opportunity to be an influencer, and I don't mean that in your sort of social media kind of like fantastic way, but I mean the fact that, like, actually you have the power to influence, to make change happen. You've got to want to do it, and you've got to want to do it for the right reasons and for what you believe in. And I think if there is any sector out there that has more people, like there isn't a sector out there, sorry, that has more people with a passion and a drive and a real belief in what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I think we need to be able to encourage people to amplify that even more. And I think you're right. A lot of people don't have the confidence to do that, but that's because we are constantly, I suppose, feeling the need to justify ourselves through our kind of whole sector based in mistrust. We want to be able to do those things, but it is difficult when you're constantly fighting back against a system that isn't really set up for some of that. But I think it's those small kind of progressive movements forward that we can take that I think are so key to actually shaping social care to what we want it to be for the future. And I think that's vital. And more people need to do that more actively and more readily, definitely. And you made me go away now and think, I'm going to look at those two people I just thought, I'm going to see how they line up, because I haven't actually done it. I haven't thought about it, because I think often a lot of the time we take it on the personalities we meet. Within minutes of meeting someone, if you think this company is going to align with you, and it comes down to times there was another company, again I will not name, who approached me to do a rota kind of process with a rota management sort of thing. And I was looking at their system and I was like, yeah, okay, I've seen it before, nothing special, it's not so unique, although they were proclaiming it to be so fantastic. And I was like, well, actually, I've kind of seen this thing before. And I went away and I said, you know what, let me know what your pricing is and I'll come back. So they gave me the pricing. They were going to charge me £33,000 for implementation. And I went back and said, no, thank you. We are not taking this any further. And then, obviously we could talk about it. We could think about it. And I was like, well, you should have come up with the goods at the beginning stages. And then I kind of dinged them after that. I'm quite good at dinging salesmen. Apologies to any who might be listening to this today. Trying to get me on my phone is not easy. But I think as well, this company then came back to me like a month or so later, if we could get you set up before July, we would be able to get rid of that and take it down to 11,000. And I was like, well, if you could have done that, you should have done it at the start. Fuck off. I'm swearing. I was like, I'm not having it. I don't need to be taking a rise out of. It's there's so many ways in which I think we get the piss taken out of it. And I think it's just not right. It's not right at all that people are using these opportunities to take advantage of people. And yes, I understand that their implementation would probably be very comprehensive, but actually we also have to think about the long-term sustainability of what they're trying to achieve. And if they could take it off and half it, then in my eyes, they should never have charged it. And I think that's snakes in the grass, if you ask me.
Absolutely. I think just listening to you both talk there, and Adam, I'm going to bring you in a bit. I think we obviously launched that radar guide at UK Care Week, and I think I was just looking in the background at some of the comments we had on the back that came through, and it was around the prompts that guide asks around sustainability, about measuring success, the things that, like you just said, Alyson, that you don't necessarily think about. The only thing, and I don't know whether it's on that guide, but just food for thought. We work for a local authority-owned company, so the procurement of systems is very different than it ever has been. I used to just phone up a company, see if I like it, implement it. Obviously, well, I'm not doing that anymore, sadly. But the financial stability of the companies that you're looking to implement, because some of them are very borderline whether they're actually financially stable or not. So it's definitely worth inquiring into that and roadmaps and bits and pieces. Adam, I'm going to bring you in because I know that you've spoken about this before. And it was just around best implementation techniques, just following on what from Alyson was talking about. And just wanted to talk to you about, and it is, I won't name the company, I'll let you do it, but when you implemented a system around those weekly check-ins for your mobilization and what that looked like, and I don't know whether you still have them or not. I think they probably tried to get rid of you now that you've probably been with them for like 5 years. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about that, because I think that's been really important for you in terms of shaping that system to meet what you need.
So yeah, no, it has, and I'm not going to, I won't lie about it. It's Radar, and Radar, I will always talk about having a fantastic onboarding process. I mean, they held my hand all the way through it. I'm not sponsored by them. We're not sponsored by them here at the Caring View. I get no backhanders from them. I get no Christmas cards from them. They're not going to come to my wedding, but they were great during that entire onboarding process. And for me, so Radar for me is a tale of two cities, really. One city where the onboarding process from them was incredible, and I was really supported in building the system, putting it together, learning it, and making it practical and making it individual to my service. But then the other city is the city of failed implementation within my own organization, which I take the blame for. We didn't potentially go around it the best way. We tried to think about blanket approaches. We did it virtual. We tried to do some of it in person, a lot of it virtual. The uptake was poor. I think the communication of what the actual system did was probably not the best, and we could have improved. And I've reflected a lot on that over the last sort of 9-10 months. And we've since changed our approach to that implementation, and the buy-in and the take-up has been much better. We're seeing improvements across the services and the use of the system. I'm not going to lie, it's not the prettiest system. For people who like pretty systems, Radar's not it, because it's not gorgeous, it's not sexy. For the practicalities and the getting of your data and your analytics of themes and trends and events, incidents, wonderful, great for what it is. So for me, it was important, and it's more important now moving forwards, learning from this experience. If we do go with another provider for any digital services, I will be asking them what that customer relationship is for the first sort of week, 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, 12 months. Where are we at after 12 months? Do we put a roadmap together? Conversely, we use another provider for policies, and I won't name who they are. And I asked them the other month a question, and they said, "Oh no, it's not something we do at the moment." So I said, "Oh, okay, no worries. Is it on your roadmap?" We don't have a roadmap anymore. Okay, so you are a digital system who you've just basically told me you're not investing in innovation and improvements and continuous progression. Why would I stay with you? Is it because you've got the monopoly of the market now because you're a big organization? And that for me lost a lot of my trust. And one thing I've learned through using Radar and through using Your Hippo, the LMS learning platform, again, Your Hippo isn't perfect. Your Hippo has its flaws. But what Your Hippo has is a really strong, robust roadmap of how they're developing and going and what they want to provide. Yes, there's other training providers out there. And yes, those training providers have been around for 20 years, but they look the same as they did 20 years ago. Whereas these newer systems aren't afraid to adapt and grow and develop. They have, and Radar is great for this. So any digital system that you go with, ask them if they've got like a consortium or whether they've got a user group, whether they've got focus groups where you as providers get together to share your learning experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly. Radar has that, and it's great because they listen to us and go, right, is there anything that you need developing at the minute? I think in the last one I had was like automated reports. Like, is there a way that I can just schedule a report? Because it's great that I can build my own report and I can make it bespoke, like to the absolute minutiae. I can make my reports and it's fabulous. But I've got to go in and manually run it. And when I'm busy, I just want on a Monday for my reports to come to me. Is there a way that I can automate it? Oh, well, look at that. We'll put that into the development phase. We'll look at developing that. And that's what you want to hear. You want to hear people listening to the people who use the system. I go to it and go, look, my team are using it, and they just think, why is it working this way? It's not really that effective. If you did it this way, it'd be much more effective. The most recent example is, and I'm going to bore people now, but on Radar, you allocate your work out to people. And let's say someone leaves your organization, but you've scheduled 12 months of work for them. You'd have to go in and individually sort of reallocate it. Or you're allocated everything for the month and then you delegate it out to your team. You're only able to sub-delegate certain areas. And we got in touch and we're like, is there not a way that you can just bulk manage this delegation? Like, I want to bulk manage the ownership of these tasks. Well, there isn't at the moment. I mean, lo and behold, 4 months later, you've got bulk delegation for everything now. And it makes things so much quicker and so much more simple. But for me, it's reassuring as a user because they've listened and they've gone, we'll develop this. We'll put it in place and it'll make work better for you. There'll be people out there sitting there going, but you're using a provider that's not fully developed yet and they've not got a full product and it's not a finished product. And I'm like, no product is ever finished. No product is ever finished. And if someone tells you they're selling you a finished product, red flags, like literally, no, do not pass go, do not collect 200, do not, no, not at all. Don't invite them around for dinner. A product is never finished. So for me, my experience with Radar has been tremendous because of that. I do find from the regulatory point of view that regulators don't understand these systems and continually will pick flaws at them. Oh, but what about this? And what if this doesn't happen? And why, how would you look at this? And how would you look at that? And I sometimes just want to go to them. Stop being so, use a word that Alyson would use on this podcast that I won't use, in negative. And Joyce, be, and actually just go, show me the impact of you using it so far. Because that for me is more important of what can't this do to actually what outcomes have you had so far. And I know, for example, for me using Radar, I've been able to highlight risks that we wouldn't have noticed until months down the line. And I'm going, we need to do something about this now. And we can move out of this and the team can work together and we can find solutions collectively. That's what the regulators should be focusing on, not, oh, we used to do this on paper and you're using a digital system now. How would that marry up? No. How has the impact been for the people who use your service and for the team? Yeah, the team aren't always going to like it. And I feel guilty for that. Don't get me wrong. I take that guilt every single day. And I would love all of my team to enjoy the system of all the systems we use. We use systems I don't like, but, it is part of what it is. Moving forward, I think I would very much take on board what Alyson's done and go, right, what's the problem we want to solve? Who is it that's going to be using this problem solver? And what do they want to see from it? Not, this is us as senior management, this is a product we're going to buy and everyone's going to like it, which is probably how I approached Radar, to more actually, and I'm not ashamed to admit these flaws. I'm happy to say, look, we need to improve and do better, but actually get your team together and go, right, this is a solution we're thinking of. How should we do it moving forwards? What do you want to see from the system? And take it on board from them and learn from them and meet their problem. I would never go with a digital provider now who says, I can solve your problem because your problem's this and this is what we do. And I'm like, you don't know what our problem is. I'm going to stop talking because Alyson's our guest and it's not me.
No, I'm fascinated listening. I'm just taking it all in because I think there's loads of what you're sharing. I think that is actually so important for people to hear again and again, like that idea of what we're all doing in all of this space is learning. And I think actually we all have to just share that more actively, more openly. I think it would be great if there were some sort of place or space for people to just actually, write reviews on, care and technology that's used within care services, to get those sort of really honest reviews in a space that was not, wasn't the company, so you can believe actually what's written, like having like an equivalent TripAdvisor, a bit of like the care software. Maybe the Caring View can take up that mantle, like who knows, like what it could do. But I think there's so much of that I think is really important. Now, we've been working with a great company very recently who are using AI in recruitment, and a shout out to Team Lily because we have worked really closely with them, and when that whole process started, they came with like a very, very basic kind of idea, often an idea to like when they first started the conversations with us, it really wasn't fully formed in what they were trying to do, and then they've kind of pivoted and changed and shifted. And actually, the whole time we've had conversations with them, we've said, actually, well, this works for us here and this works for us there. And so they're allowing us to use their tech in a way that meets our need. And I think that has been an approach which I think cannot go underestimated. I am not in any way looking for a knight in shining armor from a tech organization to come in and solve all my problems. I want to be able to be involved in that conversation and help shape something that's really going to make a difference. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, Adam. It's like, actually, I've talked about this load before, but we are not stupid in the care sector. We know what we want and we know what we need to do and we know how we need to change it. We don't need people coming in and telling us like how to fix it. We can fix it if we're given the support to be able to do that. And that's what tech providers should be. They should be the people providing and facilitating the support to solving problems, not just solving them in their way. Definitely.
And in their way, which they can then just sell and make money and then bugger off somewhere. Because that's what a lot of these providers do.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's a really scary space, actually, for any, for providers like ours. We've been around for over 30 years, right? And I think about like how many of those tech companies have been there that long. Like, who of them have the legacy and the staying power to demonstrate, those sort of like, real, the real comfort to the sector? And I think there isn't much. And I understand why. Everything's innovating, but I think about how technology has shifted in the last year, right? So much has changed in the last year. We almost are always at the point where we can never predict what might come next. So you can understand why people are resistant and kind of fearful of change and of all that sort of thing. Like, we know that in every single shape and its form. But actually, I think what we need to be able to feel more confident in is how we can take control of that narrative and how can we change the things we want to change and what does it look like, definitely.
Absolutely. Let's talk pitfalls. Before we do pitfalls, I just was on the CareTech Guide website. So they have a section. I don't have an account with them, but it does say that they have genuine care provider reviews on care systems on there. So benefit from the collective wisdom of your peers through reliable views on products by fellow care providers. Share your own reviews and contribute to our community. You might help someone make the right choice on their next procurement journey. So we don't need to do it at the care review. When you said that, Alyson, I was thinking, I don't have enough time in my life.
I was thinking to myself,
don't need any more.
I was like, I can barely moderate my own thoughts and feelings, let alone other people's on other things. I'm like, I'd be no good at this.
We'll get the CareTech link popped out in the chat for you all, just in case there is anybody that kind of wants to explore that further. Adam, you got me very excited when you spoke about automated reports with Radar right on my to-do list, and then you were like, no, it's coming. I was like, oh,
I can't wait for the day. I am going to make sure that I keep asking it, though, because the reports are fab. It's just, I want to be able to just send my reports to me on a scheduled time. And Radar has this thing called Pulse, where you can set up a dashboard where it will notify you if things are at a risk. So if your service goes above X amount of audits that are overdue, it sends you an email or a text to say, warning, warning, which is great. But sometimes I'd like to get a report every Monday around open safeguardings, and it just send it through to me, because it just makes life so much easier. And the whole point of these digital systems for us is to save our managers time. So if my managers don't then need to go and look up how many safeguardings they've got and put a report together and send it through to us, but actually it could just come directly through to ops and quality. Oh, mwah.
Well, I feel that's what AI and tech is there for, isn't it? Is to automate things for us. So it makes sense. Right, let's talk about pitfalls and also any kind of warning signs if you've got a supplier that isn't reliable, isn't meeting your needs. I think we've obviously discussed around about some of those pitfalls to avoid and what to do. Alyson, over to you. What are some of those pitfalls that you've avoided or that you've bumped into and then dug yourself back out of?
I don't know. Like, I suppose I don't know. It's really tricky because I think, I think that sometimes you don't know it's a pitfall until you're in it. And I think it's okay. I think the thing I would suggest maybe actually is it's okay to recognize when it is that, when you are in a place where you're actually, oh God, I've not got that right. I need to change my approach. I kind of think like Adam was kind of sharing in terms of like his implementation stuff. I think actually it's incredibly hard. And one thing I don't feel like enough credit or kind of kudos is given is to providers when they're go through those changing processes by regulators to really acknowledge, okay, yes, you don't have this thing here right now, but you're working towards it, or you don't have that data, and sometimes that kind of understanding is really missed. But I think it also comes with that really reflective approach to okay, constantly evaluating, are we doing this right? Is this working? And if you implement, those real self-evaluation and reflective processes, then you can avoid some of that, I think. Or if not, if you're in it, you can learn from it and think about how you move forward from the next time. I mean, I think I can't even think of anything specific. I'm sure I've made a lot of mistakes. I think the implementation thing is huge in terms of getting that right. And when that isn't right, you waste your time, effort, and money putting all your eggs in one basket, and then it won't work. So I think in terms of the kind of things that we've done, a lot of that has been about trying, about making sure we're getting people's opinions and their voices and their thoughts on it to try and avoid some of that. But I think also sometimes you just find yourself taken in by somebody when you really shouldn't have been. There is still that, at the end of the day, some of these tech providers are, snake oil salesmen. I think you have to be very aware of what you are thinking about in terms of how things are going to work logically and practically within the context of where you're going to introduce it. You can't introduce any system, any technology, any ideas without really thinking about, okay, how does that integrate with all the other aspects of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it? And I think sometimes the pitfall is forgetting that and just thinking, well, if I've got this shiny new thing over here, that'll solve, loads of problems, when actually you've forgotten about that big mess that's hiding in the corner, and you're still going to have that mess. And actually then maybe you're just going to end up making a bigger mess because you've not sorted out all your stuff. So I think it's really important to just have that real kind of clean slate of where you're going. And I think knowing the context. So one thing we think about with our trials and our kind of tests, wherever we do them, is okay, what are the wider context to what we're putting this test into? So actually, am I going to put it in my best performing home because my best performing home does really, really well? But actually, if it's my best performing home, I'm probably not going to figure out where it's going to go wrong because they just do everything really, really well. So maybe I should put it in my worst performing home because they're going to show me where the problems are. Or they're going to be able to be improved much more quickly. All of those sort of things. I think it's about having a really clear knowledge and understanding of your own kind of, what's the word? I don't know. Know your own patch first before you then start bringing other bits into it. Really, I think is the biggest thing I would say.
Adam, anything from you? I'm very conscious of time. I've written a list based on some of my experiences.
No. I mean, for me, I'm going to come back to the chat because one of my managers has come in and said, pitfall if the system goes down. And I think this is one thing we give very little consideration to is, what are our contingencies? What are our contingencies if all of a sudden we don't have internet and we can't access email, or we can't log our care records, or we can't access our audits, or as we fully experienced with our digital rota system a few months ago, the entire thing goes down and your team can't access their rotas. What are your contingencies? Because on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, the last thing you need is your team not accessing rotas. It's terrifying. So it's about making sure that your BCPs, your business continuity plans, take into account your digital systems. You ask your digital providers what their contingencies are. What if your servers go down? How do I access my data? How do I continue using my system? Is it a case of having a bunch of emergency printed out blank MAR sheets to go as you need them? And as Julie Garrity reminded us a couple of weeks back on the show, a MAR sheet doesn't have to be a MAR sheet. A MAR sheet could just be a record of medication as long as it's got the name of the meds and the delivery and everything like that. It could be a diary. It doesn't really matter how it looks. It's about making sure you've got a process in place to log it no matter what. A lot of these systems come with delayed login, so you can log stuff and you can wait until the sort of internet reconnects, and that's absolutely fabulous. Some of these systems you can't even log into until the internet reconnects. So business continuity plans, making sure you've got your own contingencies, and then while you're at it, ask them for their AI usage policies, ask them for their data protection policies, all that sort of stuff. For me, one of the pitfalls is not having enough foundational knowledge yourself on technology and not taking into account some of the serious stuff that might actually happen. We've just implemented our own AI usage policy today, and it's going to be a work in progress for us. But it's one of those things where we want to be confident now that we're doing things the right way, and this is an ever-evolving world, and we sort of have a bit of due diligence to do ourselves on upskilling at least somebody in your organization with that knowledge to be able to go, what about this though? What about that though? What are they going to do about that though? Not to be challenging, not to be that, oh my God, don't go to them because they're just going to point out the negatives. No, not that. But a case of I'm playing devil's advocate. Wonderful, great system, fabulous, beautiful. What happens if this happens though? Because it could. And we need to know the answer to that before we move forwards. So yeah, those are, for me, are some of the big pitfalls, some of which we've experienced and some that we're learning from.
Thank you very much. I've got a list. So this is based on recent, in the last kind of year. I think something you mentioned, Alyson, around the background of the salesperson. I think you should do your own digging on where they've worked, what companies they've worked for. I mean, I've got a friend that works in social care with suppliers that's tried to sell me products in the past, has moved companies, tried to sell me their product and said it's the best, and then moved and told me that the next product, well, which one is it? Because you've told me all three are the best, and they can all be better. Which one is it? It's a standing joke with him. But yeah, do your background because, like you said, you know, they're trained in how to sell. Adam, you mentioned staff feedback. I think that's crucial. If you've got a system that's going wrong, listen to your staff. Why is it going wrong? I think workarounds are your teams having a number of workarounds because the system you've got doesn't work, or they don't like it, so they're doing something off that system and they're doing it paper-based anyway. Long contracts we've spoken about and how you avoid them. I think in terms of pitfalls to avoid is definitely making sure you've invested in time and resource and manpower to implement a system, because I think it takes a lot more resource and time than anybody kind of thinks about, especially if you're transferring from one system to another. What does that data merging look like, that data input? Thinking about how you get that data out of your system, because there are a number of providers and suppliers out there that will not give you your data. Integration, I think once you're in, I think one of those warning signs is whether it doesn't integrate or if you implement something else. Integration is key.
Integration is key. I'm going to go back to the point you've just made though, about getting your data out of the systems. And I am going to name and shame person-centered software. Did you know you cannot export in Excel format? You can't export in CSVs, XLSXs. It's very difficult to actually export in anything other than a PDF. So you can take your data out, but you can't do anything with it. Like you can't do anything with it. You can pull out your falls on a PDF graph, but then you can't put it into a system to manually do that data. So you've got to replicate that data into an Excel sheet to then analyze it. Make your data accessible. Christ, it's 2025 for crying out loud. We're all Excel mad nowadays. You know, gone are the days where we used to think Publisher was the best because you could make stupid little picture cards and stuff like that. No, we are all like, give me an Excel spreadsheet with formulas and pivot tables. I do pivot tables. Never thought I'd be a pivot table girl, but I am. You know, give us the data that we can use in Excel. At least basics. Sorry, Mark. You just reminded me of that.
Where's Jack? Because I'm sure Jack's probably knows some kind of AI tool that you can convert into Excel or something. If there is anybody that is having trouble getting data out when they're exiting contracts, speak to Michelle Corrigan at the Digital Care Hub, because she's full of tips and tricks, and it isn't uncommon. I think we've spoken about the roadmap and outdated infrastructure. I think look at if you've got missed tasks. If your home care miss visits, why, and those lessons learned, and does that relate back to kind of the system that you've got in place? We've spoken about that backup if your system goes down. I think one of the biggest things is around what does their out-of-hours support looks like? Is it 24 hours and is it 7 days a week? Because you can bet your bottom dollar it's going to be on a Friday night or over the weekend that it goes down, and you need somebody around, and it's not a tech service or an AI bot. It needs to be an actual person. And I think the other couple of things I wrote about was about fee increases. So there was a tech supplier that was on the verge of going bankrupt, and they were ramped up their fees for all of their customers, astronomical. I think a large number of the sector quit their contracts and moved to other suppliers. But I think that's a warning sign. Why are they putting their fees up astronomically? Obviously, this one, it was publicly known. But just also speak to your fellow care providers about issues you're having, because are they generic or are they universal, or are they just specific to you? And I think if they're generic across the board, then join forces. And, you know, I'll name and shame. I think Access had a huge problem with some of their customers, and they all came together, and went back to Access and ended up in a room with their CEO to talk about the problems that they were having and what Access were going to do with it, because obviously all these providers were having issues with their contracts, with data, with outages. So I think, like we've spoken about tonight, we've got more power with more voices, so utilize that. Yeah, that's my list. I'm sure there's more, and I can't let anybody know. But yeah, we're going through a big implementation change of our systems after listening to the voice of the people that choose them.
I think for me, the biggest takeaway that I've got from this is actually it is that listening to your team and just being humble. Like I've admitted it to my team that we could have done implementation a bit differently. It was my first task of joining the organization. We need digital governance system. Oh my God, right, perfect. Let's get something in place. If I knew then what I know now, I'd be doing it differently. And for me, it's that reassurance that if you are working for an organization and you've got senior leadership and they can't do that, and they can't learn from that, and they can't change the way they do things moving forwards, that would be a warning sign. Whereas hopefully for us in our organization, the fact that we go, right, this has happened, what went well, let's do more of that. What didn't go well, oh, let's do less of that. What could we do differently? Let's try that. And that's what really, really matters, is that ability to go, we don't get things right all the time, but actually we're going to try and get things right more often than getting things wrong. Because if we get things wrong, we're not going to replicate it. But like Alyson says, listening to your team, working with your team and involving them on that journey. Alyson, some final thoughts before we put you in the break for swearing live on the Caring View.
I know, right? I'm really impressed. It was only once. I mean, I could have said it before.
I'm really impressed. It was only the F word, if I'm completely honest. So you know.
Yeah, no, anyone who knows me, that was like this is a real struggle of mine. No, I think like everything you touched on there is really important. It's actually the communication. It's the communication when you're in the process. It's the communication before the process. It's the communication continually afterwards to make sure it's still meeting the needs and still going. And it's such a it's such a basic thing, isn't it? Like, communication. Like, actually, the whole of care is about communication. If we can't get communication right between each other, then how do we ever impact the communication that we're delivering for the care that we're putting out there? So I think from that perspective, boring and really kind of bland, but communication is so key and so important about how you're talking about what it is that you're trying to do, and just make sure people know your intentions. Like, I think a lot of the time when people don't know why are we moving to a digital system, what do you want to get from it, and I think as leaders, that is one of the challenges, is just making sure that everyone hears the reality of your intentions, rather than the Chinese whispers of like, oh, they're doing this to save money, or they're doing this to cut people, or they're doing this because, but it's actually about, no, hang on, this is it, straight from the horse's mouth. This is why we're making these changes, and this is what we want to and hope to achieve. And if you're with me, great, let's move forward together. Definitely.
You say communication and stuff, but actually, when you look at things that fail, they fail more often than not due to poor communication.
100%. Is that's when the relationships break down. That's when that, like, kind of, and it's that adage sort of like, if you ever go into a service that's not doing great, the first thing people say, the communication in here is terrible. And you're like, okay, that is the first thing that everybody always says. But I suppose what I am always really conscious of in those circumstances is like, how do we actually encourage everyone that is something that everyone is responsible for? It's not just the individual at the top or the people on the front line. It's actually everyone is responsible for communication. It is everyone's business. And it means that, you've got to really be clear about what it is that you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. And I think it's key to make that change, definitely. Yeah. I didn't even mention about the fact that, like, obviously the new digital care record is something that Scotland is mandating through their Care Act. So there's loads of kind of like, now is the time. And it's how we do that with, I think, the right support and the right kind of like honesty with each other. Definitely. I think providers talk to each other so much more than ever they have before. And I think actually that's biting some providers in the backside, tech providers, because they don't recognize that, or they don't realize that. And actually, when somebody becomes disgruntled, there's a lot of conversation that goes on. It says, don't use them. And I think people have to be really aware that their customer service has to be really, really key in all of these experiences. Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Word of mouth is the best and worst type of marketing out there. So be on it. Oh, Alyson, an absolute pleasure to have you on with us. As always, please don't be a stranger. You're more than welcome on as often as you want to. We will make sure you're on after Watershed next time, though, so that we don't get into. No, I'm teasing. We're not the BBC. You can say what you want. The BBC say what they want. It's usually just propaganda. But no, you can say what you want on the Caring View. Mark, absolutely fabulous show as always. What have we got going next week?
Oh gosh, what have we got next week? I don't have a clue. Are we? I don't know. Who knows? Some conversation next week.
I was trying to
look at the schedules, but it won't show me, and that's what I was relying on. We've got 2 scheduled, and I can't
developing mental toughness. That's what we've got next week, and I'm really looking forward to that because for those who don't know, I'm in therapy. Like I go to sit on a shrink's couch every single Thursday, and I'm like, they're like, so what is going on in your life? And do you see naked women when you close your eyes? No, they're not. It's not like Freud or anything like that.
I was going to say, no way, they're German. Wow.
Yeah, no, my partner's German though, so I'm allowed to do that by proxy. I don't know whether I am or not. But no, it's really, really beneficial because it's just nice to go to talk to someone who doesn't pass opinion, doesn't give judgment, and I can sit there and go, oh my God, all of this is happening in my life right now, and I journal, and it's really important to be able to. She said to me last week, how long are you going to be doing this for? Because I'm block booking my sessions, and she's not used to people block booking their sessions. And I was like, well, A, I need to commit, so I'm paying for multiple sessions in a go. And B, why would I think about stopping? Because I'm going through this health kick at the moment. I've lost 10 stone. I'm never not going to be conscious about what I put in my body. So why, when I'm super happy with my brain and my mental, am I going to go, don't need to do that anymore? Mm-hmm. I need to keep that going because it's super, super important. And I'm a very open book. I'm not ashamed to talk about anything. I'm not embarrassed about anything. I wear a wig, for crying out loud. I've got no room to be embarrassed anymore. So for me, it doesn't hinder me, but it is really important that, especially within the male community, we start talking more, even if it's just to somebody that you pay money. Do you know what I mean? Prostitution has been around for centuries. We pay people to have sex with us. Why can't we just pay people to listen to us? There's nothing to be ashamed about. Like, it's, by the way, prostitution is nothing to be ashamed about. I think sex work should be legal, but that's a different talk for a different night. But I know that I use sex workers at all. I'm in a happily monogamous relationship.
I feel like we could go on forever. We could just keep going. This is getting interesting.
Digging a hole here. I might as well jump into it with my many sex workers that I'm in with. No, but I think we're afraid to actually talk about paying people to listen to us. It's nothing to be ashamed about. I think people should do it. And I think next week's conversation is super, super important. So even if you want to join anonymously next week to sit in and go, this is probably something I need to look into and I don't know where to start. I don't know what I should be thinking about. I have moments where I don't want to be here anymore because I've had them. I had to talk to my partner about 6 years ago about me wanting to end my life. So we've all been there. You're all going to be there at some point in your life. No one is infallible from this. So it's really, really important. Even if you're not confident about talking about it, just join next week. Listen in. Find someone that you can talk to. Super important show next week. So yeah, check it out. God, it's a bit of a heavy thing to finish on, wasn't it? I've got a bubble bath that I'm going to go to because that's part of my mental toughness routine. So there we go, a little bit of a positive to finish on. This has been The Caring View, www.thecaringview.co.uk. Explicit version tonight. Thank you, Alyson. I'm teasing, obviously. Go to find out all of our sponsors, our podcast episodes, chat show episodes. You can catch us on YouTube on repeat, on demand, as they say. No password sharing restrictions on The Caring View. It's free to access for everybody. And we will be live next Tuesday at 7:30 across all of your favorite platforms. So until then, good night, stay safe, and we will see you next week.
See you later.